Ted, do you care about the EA college football player rankings?
Um,
Do they
y-
matter to you?
I don't necessarily know that they matter to me, but it is a one of the things I like about it is it's hard to keep up with everyone in college football with where they all are, what players are where, how good are they. So I think it's actually a good guide to kind of know, what all is out there, so to speak, who all the best players in the country are.
I I saw them release their top 100 players on the video game, and I actually found it extremely helpful
Hmm.
because, and maybe I think the ratings are more meaningful than maybe a lot of other people do, but I'm assuming that EA Sports went through a similar process like they do for Madden. Those ratings are not an accident. These rankings are determined by people that know football, coaches, NFL scouts, NFL executives. So when I saw the top 100 players on EA Sports College Football 25, I do think it is a good tool to look at and go, okay, who's really loaded? And you see Ohio State with 8 of the top 100 players on the video game.
Yeah.
And it kind of paints a picture of, okay, they have some serious talent. They always have serious talent, but they've got some absolute dudes on that football team. And that's why expectations are what they are for Ohio State. But yeah, these player rankings, they aren't just random. Now, some people may say, well, there's SEC bias or there's Big Ten bias. I don't know if that's the case or not, but these player rankings are they are a product of people that know football and collecting those people's input. So
Yeah.
I found them extremely useful and I found them really interesting to look at.
I did too, especially the top 10. That's what I saw first. I saw the top 10 first, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot Michigan is loaded with talent because they have the number one player and they've got I think he was the number one defensive tackle. He was number 8. Is it Mason Graham? Is
He
that his
is
name?
an
Yeah.
absolute beast.
And then they've got another, I think they've got like another 2 or 3 players in the top 100, most of them defensive guys. So it's like, oh yeah, I forgot Michigan's got some players. They got some dudes coming back.
They aren't just a bunch of slappies.
Right.
But looking at the OU guys, Sooners only have 2 players ranked in the top 100 players. Danny Stutsman is a 91 overall. He is the 52nd ranked player on the game. And then Billy Bowman is a 90. He is the 94th ranked player on the video game. Do, does anyone else really have an argument to be in that conversation? I think maybe you look at the wide receiver position. I don't know, but it feels like those 2 guys belong in that group.
Hmm.
And then maybe there's a group of guys that have the ability to play themselves into that top 100. And maybe that's the more fun conversation is what guy is most likely to play themselves into being a top 100 guy on the video game as those rosters get updated throughout the season. But it feels like those 2, Stutzman and Bowman, it feels like those are the 2 that belong in the conversation as of now.
For sure. Without a doubt. I guess like if I had a guy to argue, it'd probably be Dominic Williams. Um, I think like because a guy like Burks he's a relative unknown, but
He is an 88 overall though.
yeah,
So I if he has the type of season that you and I think he can have, if that offensive line comes together and Jackson Arnold gets time back there, Burks is going to have a big year because that dude can absolutely fly.
yeah. So I mean, I would say like Burks, I think should I'll be upset if Dominic Williams doesn't find his way in there, if Burks doesn't find his way in there, if Nic Anderson doesn't find his way in there, and
Well, if
you know,
Burks and Nic Anderson find their way in there, then Jackson Arnold's going to find his way in there.
that's right. That's right. I think it all comes together. So
Maybe Jackson Arnold will be ranked higher than Arch Manning by then.
maybe.
Oh, you
But
fans were so mad about that, and understandably so.
but it is, it is interesting that your point about does anyone really have much of an argument? It's kind of hard to say that they do, but I think we've got plenty of guys that we could go down the list that are kind of poised to jump into the national conversation, right? I mean, on both sides of the ball.
I think that's fair. I think that out of all the guys, one of the wide receivers, and then I don't know what. How about this? Would it shock you if Gentry Williams was completely healthy and was arguably the best player on OU's defense this season? I don't even know if he's going to start, Ted, but all I
I
know is
know.
there were some moments a year ago where you and I were talking to each other going, okay, this kid is going to be the real deal. And
Yeah,
then his shoulder started falling off his body and he wasn't the same player. But there were some moments where he was playing at a very, very high level.
I agree. And I, it's kind of hard to say. Like the best player on the defense, I think it's hard to ever say a corner's the best player on your defense. I because it's almost like they're in a totally different world, like in some aspect. I do think that he could end up finding himself to be the highest ranked player out there because of what the skill set he has at corner. That's just a weird thing for me to say. The corner's the best player on a defense. But I don't know. I hope that we say that. I hope that we say anyone is the best player on our defense, like that comes out of nowhere, whether it's a Kendall Dolby, who Coach Venables thinks has a chance to have an incredible year at Cheetah. If we find our Mason Thomas starts, getting to the quarterback at a high rate, if Kip Lewis, has a couple of interceptions and he's making tackles behind the line of scrimmage, like I think there's capabilities for a bunch of guys, but I mean, Gentry Williams does. He does seem like one of those guys that we could find ourselves at some point in the season being like, no one's caught a ball on him yet, and he's made a bunch of tackles behind the line of scrimmage because that's what I loved about him the most. And maybe it's the reason his shoulder got destroyed, but anytime they threw something quick like behind the line of scrimmage or a little bubble or tunnel out to his side, no chance. He was super aggressive coming after it.
We'll see. It will be fun how those rankings are going to get updated throughout the season.
So, what is the process on that? Do you have any idea?
Not really, but it happens on Madden,
Yeah,
from what I understand. And I'm sure that won't make guys competitive in the locker room at all.
I know. Hey, the more metrics there are out there for everyone to measure what's happening, the better.
It's going to be great. Now, you look at the highest ranked players on the game. You mentioned that top 10. You got Will Johnson at Michigan, Will Campbell at LSU,
Couple of
and,
corners.
and Ollie Gordon. No, Will Campbell's their left tackle, and he's legit.
Oh yeah, yeah. Will Johnson's the corner. Sorry, I was. Yeah,
Ollie Gordon checking in at 96, highest ranked guy in the game. It's a lot of respect for Ollie Gordon, man. And he was fantastic for them a year ago. I mean, he was an absolute dog for them, but highest ranked player on the game, Ollie Gordon. I saw it didn't surprise me, but maybe it did surprise me. I'm not sure. I was a little surprised that he was the highest ranked guy on the football game.
yeah. I, he's such an intriguing player to me because like and I don't like I trust what Mike Gundy and them have done at Oklahoma State. I mean, they've got good coaches over there, clearly. But how in the world could you have a guy that's the highest ranked player in the country at college football and he's almost an afterthought to start the season until they got what 3 or 4 games in? That just seems incredibly rare. Now, maybe there, and I'm sure there is a lot more to that story, but it's almost like they stumbled across him last year. You know what I'm saying?
You're saying what a lot of Oklahoma State fans were saying last season. Like, how did we not? Why were we not giving the ball to this guy all season
I
long?
know. I know.
No, it is. I said it at the end of last year. I thought he was the most important player to his team in the country.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I thought that what he did for that offense was just spectacular. So I've come around to it. Yeah, 96 feels right. With
Well, he's got great size. He's got great vision. Like some of the
yeah,
cuts and things that he makes are incredible. Clearly has good top end speed. He's got some really long runs, 70, 80 plus yards. So, I mean, it's hard to argue with it. I'm at the same time, I would be shocked if he replicates the type of season he had last year.
yeah.
Maybe I should, maybe I
I,
shouldn't be,
I
but
don't know. They got pretty much everyone back,
yeah.
and
Well,
Oklahoma and Texas are no longer in the conference.
that's true.
So I wouldn't be now. I'm not sure he's going to have the same amount of touches he had a year ago, because man, they now the Gundy did
I
say
don't know. Last year he didn't really start touching the ball until like the fourth game. So,
that's true. I I think I have. I don't know if it's a hot take or not, Ted,
okay.
but I was going through the rankings, and Kelvin Banks is the 13th highest ranked player on the game. He is the second highest ranked offensive tackle, only behind Will Campbell from LSU. And man, I just do not understand how you could watch his film from a year ago and think he's the second best tackle in college football. He wasn't even the best tackle on his team last season. Christian Jones was. He was a better player than him last year. There's no denying that Kelvin Banks is extremely talented. I'm not saying he's not, but he's not the second best offensive tackle in college football, or at least that's not who he's been up to this point. And maybe he will put it all
But how
together
long
this
have we
season.
been told that?
I don't know. He had a really solid true freshman year, and I didn't think he got much better.
Yeah.
So that's where I saw it, and maybe I'm just lower on him than a lot of people. And I actually asked some NFL scouts. I was like, "What kind of grade do you have on Banks?" Some guys have a really high grade on him. I am undoubtedly lower on him than most, but I also watched the tape, and I thought his inconsistency last year was alarming. Got beat a lot, got push pulled a lot, was on the ground a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in the Big 12. What's it going to look like for him in the SEC against those edge players week in and week out? I don't know. I just don't think he's put that type of play on tape. Maybe this is the year that he does, but I don't know, man. Yeah, it's important to be big and athletic and to move well, and he does all of those things. But man, it's about blocking people. And there were big stretches of last season where he struggled to block people. So I don't know what I'm missing. Once again, maybe he puts it all together this season, but with what I've seen from him on tape, I mean, there's just no way you can convince me he's the second best tackle in all of college football.
I know. Hey, I'm with you. I
I like to think I know what I'm looking at when I'm watching offensive line play.
Yeah.
But I just I'm just not seeing what a lot of people are seeing when it comes to Kelvin Banks.
And I also think that you do a really good job of calling it fair with no bias. And for whatever reason, it's like I've been hammered in the head with how good Kelvin Banks is for a long time now. And he's I'm not suggesting that he's not any good. He's definitely a good offensive tackle for sure. But it's I don't know, the propaganda's been just overboard, it feels like. But you're right. I mean, this is kind of the year for him. This will be the year where they got a tough schedule. He'll have some tough matchups and going to have a lot of eyeballs on him. So maybe he lives up to it.
Yeah. I I will be the first one to say if he comes out and he's playing at an extremely high level, I would say, hey, I was wrong.
Yeah.
Guy's a baller.
Yeah.
But that's not what I saw a year ago. So we'll see.
I don't
But
know who's going to be playing edge, but he'll have a good test early against Michigan in that defense.
there's no doubt about it. But you look at I think one of the more interesting things about the player rankings and in the top 100 is just seeing the collection of talent on some teams.
Mm-hmm.
We mentioned the 8 guys on Ohio State, clearly stacked. Then every time you look at a list now, man, you got to look at how many SEC teams are on it. And what Georgia and Bama both have 6 players on the top 100. LSU, who their fan base, you are their new favorite, Ted. LSU has 4 players in the top 100. Ole Miss has 3. Texas, Kentucky, and OU have 2. A&M, Tennessee, Arkansas, Missouri all have 1. So I'm not great at math, but you add all of those up together, and I think the SEC has 29 of the top 100 players in the video game.
Hmm. You'd think it'd be higher than that.
You'd think it, I thought it would be more, 35 to 40 ish,
Yeah.
but 29 is still a lot for one conference.
Yeah, and I'd have to go back through it and scan it in depth, but I think you probably get a lot of quarterbacks in there, and I don't know. It is interesting though. It is interesting. 29 of the top 100. Hmm.
How about Shedeur Sanders being the highest ranked quarterback? I guess him and
I'm
Carson Beck are technically both 93s, but Shadeur's one spot ahead of him on the list that EA Sports put out.
Yeah, I I'm not exactly sure how I feel about that. I'd have him definitely close, but his offensive line is so horribly bad. It's hard to give him like an honest assessment. Like if you go back and watch Colorado versus USC, and I know USC's defense, okay, I understand that. But he makes some of the most unbelievable throws I've ever seen in that game. Just like evading, getting outside, and like threading the needle into the end zone. So I don't know. I think that like a lot of things, there's probably a little marketing in there, but because I know there's I don't know if you asked NFL scouts about this, but there's plenty of people that have him as the highest drafted quarterback coming out this year.
He's he's got tools, man.
Yeah.
Do you think the quote at Big 12 Media Day about them being everyone's Super Bowl is that going to help or hurt his ranking?
I mean, there's some truth to it, but it's not like people are gunning for them, but it's not like the Super Bowl. Like there's a different dynamic at play there. Like, he's onto something, but he's got the wrong aspect of it, I think.
I would say they have created a target on themselves. So there's a difference
Exactly.
between their target and Bama's target.
Yes,
Bama's
exactly.
target is, or Bama and Georgia, and you probably throw Michigan in that conversation now as the defending champs, but their target is those are the big dogs. Let's go beat them. Colorado's target is those guys talk a lot. If we go and whoop them, we're going to get a lot of attention for it. Let's go whoop them.
Yeah, it's like the Bama Super Bowl is, hey, if we all lock in, play our best game, maybe we could win this thing. With Colorado, it's like, let's see if we can beat them by 100 points.
It's different. They do have a unique ability for a team that has not won games to have the other team motivated to beat them and to be really excited for the football game because
Which
Deion
may be
Sanders,
the worst trait you could ever have for a team.
you're not that good and everyone is super motivated to play you and beat the hell out of you. It is literally the worst combination possible.
Oh, wow. That's funny. But hey, you know, I, they've got some players. They put a handful of really good players together, but it's going to take way more than that. And people can say whatever they want about the Big 12 without OU and Texas. It is not an easy league. The, they may have a more difficult time this year than they did last year, and they had a hard schedule last year.
Yeah. I, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they were a 4-8 team. We'll see.
It may be hard to get to four.
It's going to be really interesting to see how they get covered. Last year, especially the way that the year started with
It was the
TCU.
perfect storm last
Oh,
year.
and it was fun, man. It was
It
entertaining.
was.
It
It
was,
was.
but I don't know. I am. I know this. I'm going to want to watch Colorado at least early.
They start with Nebraska. Is that the first game out of the gate for them, or is that the second game?
I don't think it's the first game out of the gate,
But
but
that's going to be a big one. Like you
no,
cannot
you
lose
know who
that
they
game.
have out of the gate, dude?
Who?
North Dakota State.
Ah, that's right.
Who scheduled that game?
That is a bad pick of a game.
Oh my
Bad game.
gosh. They get North Dakota State on a Thursday
Okay.
night.
It is North Dakota State Super Bowl. Okay. Let me retract it.
Yeah, they get North Dakota State, then on the road in Lincoln, and then they have to go to Colorado State. And remember how much fun that game was a season ago.
Oh, that game was awesome last year. And that came right. Did that come right after the TCU game? I think it did.
I it's all a blur at this point.
Yeah, it is. But that's like a Matt Rule. You cannot lose that football game.
No,
You cannot lose that football game.
got to win that one. But hey, if they're if they're everyone's Super Bowl man, they're going to get everyone's best shot for what, no matter what the motivation is for the opponent. But it was interesting to see Shedeur Sanders say that publicly and kind of frame it that way because it sounds ridiculous because they weren't a good football team, or at least as the season progressed and we all realized they weren't a good football team. It was it was just a weird thing to say, but it does make sense. It's not a Super Bowl as in they were so good of a team they got to the Super Bowl. It is a we know we're going to get a bunch of attention because we're playing Colorado and we want to smoke them.
That's right. That's right. We'll see how it ends up for him.
See if you can get any protection. I saw one thing like Travis Hunter complaining about their offensive line on the video game as he was playing it. pretty, pretty funny.